Pete Hegseth stood tall before the cameras, his chest filled with patriotic pride as he declared, "The United States holds the title for the world's most powerful army." His voice carried the certainty of someone who believed he was stating an undeniable truth, one that had been repeated for decades across every platform of American power. The crowd of journalists nodded along, scribbling notes as if his words were carved in stone. For years, such declarations had gone unchallenged, a reminder of the unmatched defense budgets, advanced technology, and nuclear dominance that America proudly wielded. But this time, the air in the room was different. Sitting silently among the crowd was Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, a young leader whose presence had already unsettled traditional notions of Western superiority. His expression was calm, his body language unshaken, but the silence he carried spoke louder than words. Cameras soon shifted their gaze to him, waiting, searching, anticipating a response that many knew would come. Hegseth continued to list aircraft carriers, satellites, and billion-dollar fighter jets, but all eyes were now on the captain who had become a symbol of defiance across Africa. Then, with deliberate timing, Traoré leaned toward the microphone and delivered his words with cold precision. "With your fat generals." The silence that followed was deafening. Gasps rippled across the room. Hegseth's face stiffened, his jaw locked in shock and disbelief. The insult wasn't just a comment. It was a strike at the very heart of American military arrogance. In one sentence, Traoré had not only challenged US power but ridiculed the very image of it, exposing the detachment of leaders more comfortable in boardrooms than battlefields. Within minutes, the clip went viral across the globe. Social media exploded with hashtags. #FatGenerals, #TraoréClapback, #DefiantAfrica. In Africa, young people replayed the video with pride, sharing memes, songs, and commentary that celebrated Traoré's courage. It wasn't just a witty comeback, it was a moment of liberation, a reminder that Africa no longer had to bow its head to Western dominance. In America, the reaction was far more complicated. Some defended Hegseth, citing the undeniable scale of US military power, but others admitted the captain had exposed something real, a military leadership that seemed increasingly bloated, detached, and insulated from the people it claimed to serve. Late-night hosts replayed the moment endlessly, sometimes mocking Traoré, but often mocking the US generals themselves. Veterans joined the conversation, arguing that the military-industrial complex had grown top-heavy, more concerned with profits than purpose. What began as an insult became a mirror, reflecting uncomfortable truths. Across Africa, however, the impact went deeper than debate. Traoré's words became a declaration of dignity. For decades, African nations had been lectured about democracy, governance, and discipline by Western powers. Yet now, one of their own had stood tall on the global stage and flipped the script. He reminded Africans that true strength wasn't measured by drones or nuclear weapons, but by unity, resilience, and the refusal to be belittled. In later interviews, Traoré elaborated on his statement, "Power is not just about weapons. Power is about the people. An army of the people is stronger than any empire built on arrogance. America's generals may be rich, but Africa's fighters are hungry, and hunger builds strength." His words spread into classrooms, villages, and political offices. Analysts began publishing essays asking whether this marked the beginning of a new global order, one where Africa no longer lived under the shadow of Western superiority. For many Africans, the answer was already yes. Meanwhile, Hegseth had no response in that moment. His lips pressed together, his cheeks red with frustration, his silence caught by every camera in the room. The man who had loudly proclaimed America's invincibility was suddenly powerless against a single sentence from a young African captain. The image lingered far longer than his words about aircraft carriers. As weeks passed, the world didn't forget. The clip continued to circulate, not as entertainment but as a symbol. Universities studied it as an example of shifting power narratives. Activists quoted it during rallies. Even within US think tanks, strategists whispered caution. We cannot underestimate this new generation of African leaders. The message was undeniable. Military power may rest on weapons, But true influence is found in dignity, truth, and the courage to speak against arrogance. In that one moment, with a phrase that cut through decades of unquestioned dominance, Ibrahim Traoré reminded the world that Africa's voice could no longer be silenced. And when he asked, "With your fat generals," he did more than insult. He reshaped the global conversation, leaving even Americans to question who truly holds the power in today's world.